Today's video is about modularity, functions and procedures, and I'm first going to be giving a brief overview of these three concepts, and then we'll do some exam questions. And ignore how I sound because I'm a bit ill at the moment. Okay, so modularity. Modular programming. This is when you split large complex programs into smaller self-contained modules, and these modules form blocks of code called subroutines. Top-down design. The problem is broken down into subproblems until each is represented as an individual self-contained module which performs a specific task. Then we have functions and procedures. So these are both named blocks of code that perform specific tasks. However, procedures do not always have to return values, whereas functions must always return a single value. And then parameters are passed into subroutines either by value or by reference, which we'll go into now. So parameter passing by value and by reference. So by value, it basically means a copy of the value is passed to the subroutine and discarded at the end. Its value outside the subroutine remains unaffected, so it does not change anything. On the other hand, by reference basically means when the address of the parameter is given to the subroutine and the value of the parameter will be updated at the given address, so it changes. Okay, so question number 1, and this will be looking at what we just talked about, parameter passing. So the parameter can be passed by value or by reference. Describe what is meant by passing a parameter by value and by reference. Okay, so a local copy of the data is used, but the data does not override the original data, which also means it does not change anything. And then by reference, the memory location of the data is sent. Changes are made to the original data and changes remain after the subprogram exits. Question 2. A procedure is shown in the following pseudocode. The arrays that are passed to the procedure store integer values. Length returns the total number of elements that the array can hold. The procedure has the parameters passed by reference. Give the identifiers of 2 of the parameters. So this is our code here, and this is our procedure, and it takes in the parameters, and this is by reference. So by ref means by reference. And we've got data, and then we've got next data, and that are your 2 parameters. And then the next part of the question, state the effect of the array data being passed by reference and not by value. So we know this difference, the actual data in the array or stored in the array will be changed. Okay, question 3. A recursive function GCD is given in pseudocode. State whether the parameters should be passed by value or by reference and justify your answer. So we can read this code. Function GCD takes in num1 and num2, and these are your parameters. If num2 equals 0, then return num1, else return GCD num2, num1 mod num2, end if. So we would use by value as the original values do not need to be modified. Okay, question 4. The following pseudocode procedure performs an insertion sort on the array parameter. Explain why data array is passed by reference and not by value. You can sort of see this question's kind of repeat itself, which is why you should know the basic features of passing by reference and passing by value. So by reference changes the contents or the contents in the array in the main program, so the array will be sorted. This is because we're performing an insertion sort, so we do need to change some values. And by value creates a copy and does not change the original, so the array will not be sorted. Values are not going to be changed, therefore you can't perform the insertion sort, but it's only 2 marks, so these are your 2 points. Okay, question 5. The procedure display row answer takes puzzle as a parameter and outputs the value in each box. Each box in a row is separated by a space. Write pseudocode or program code for the procedure display row answer. Okay, so first we're going to start by creating the procedure, and we're going to take display row answer as the name of the procedure, and then we're going to take puzzle. It says here that we take puzzle as a parameter, so that is your first step. And then what it wants to do is it wants to output the value in each box. So this is each box here, and each row is represented by a space. At the end of each row there are 2 spaces, and blah blah blah. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to run a for loop, and we're going to do for I equals 0 to 4. You know, in computer science things are always indexed at 0, so this would start at 0, so you would have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it ends at 4, so you're running your for loop till 4. And then you'll do another loop for j equals 0 to 4. So this will be your rows, and that'll be the same sort of thing, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you do print puzzle, and then ij, so your values here, plus, and then a space, as it says here. Each box in the row is separated by space. And then we'll do next j, this is for your for loop, and then you're going to do print space plus count row puzzle I. It says that at the end of each row there are 2 spaces, so 1, 2, and calling the function count row from part B and the clue values for the row. So you're going to print puzzle and I. And then you're going to do next I, and then you're going to end procedure. Okay, question 6, another coding question. A procedure guess grid takes a board object as a parameter, accepts row X and column Y coordinates from the user, outputs no treasure if there's no treasure found at the coordinate, level is an empty string. If there's treasure at that coordinate, it outputs the level and the value of the treasure in an appropriate message. Write the procedure guess grid either using pseudocode or program code. Okay, so we're going to start with procedure, guess grid, and then board as your parameter. So you're going to do R coord, this is your row coordinate, and then you're going to put input, enter R coordinate. So it takes those coordinates from the user. You're going to do the same with the column, which is C coord, input, enter C coordinate. So these are our variables for our coordinates, and then you're going to do treasure item equals board.get grid item R coord C coord. So this is basically going to get the coordinates, and then you're going to do if treasure item dot get level equals, then print no treasure, so if it's empty, right? Else print this is treasure level, and then print the level, as it says outputs the level if there's treasure. And then treasure item dot get level with value, and then treasure item dot get value, and then end procedure. Okay, question 7. Functions and procedures are reusable components. Give 2 benefits of writing a program with reusable components. Okay, so the first benefit is it saves time having to write an algorithm repeatedly. If we create a function or a procedure for a specific task, for example, function multiply, right? It saves the time of having to keep on, get this number and get this number, multiply, and then output. You can just call this function every time you need it, right? So it'll make things really time saving. And then you can also say reduce testing requirements. Obviously, if you've got a long chunk of code and it's not got different functions, it'll be quite hard to test, especially if it's really long. Using functions makes the code shorter usually. So yeah, it will just take more time to test everything. Okay, and that is it. I hope that these were helpful, and yeah, that's it.